Hi everybody, it's Vince Sellers here with another episode of FBI Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the new HBO documentary called McMillions, and we're going to be talking about complex investigations that the FBI is involved with, what it's like to be an agent working on those things. We'll get into some things around Title III wiretaps and the implications of that, and just set some of the facts straight there. And that's pretty much what we have on today's episode. So thanks for tuning in. So HBO has released this documentary called McMillions. It is absolutely well done and fascinating. It's one of these multi-part series, so it's not just a 2-hour movie. It's multiple episodes, but very much worth watching. So I'm a big fan of documentaries, always have been. Many of us during these COVID times, as I'm recording this in 2020, settled back and watched things like Tiger King and some of these other documentaries. Well, I would rate this McMillions documentary right up there, and not just saying that from an FBI perspective, but just from a pure entertainment value. It is freaking crazy. Some of the things that happen, I'm sure it'll be made into some type of movie at some point. You can see that happening. It's an amazing story, and it directly involves the FBI. The production has great access to the FBI agents that were involved with the case, and so it makes for a really good story. And in particular, if you are watching this video, you're probably interested in the FBI, maybe interested in joining or just learning more about it. And so if you haven't checked that out, absolutely do so. That can paint a picture of a really interesting and fun investigation. Not that most investigations aren't quite that exciting, but it does give you a realistic view of what it's really like to be behind the scenes on the FBI working a case like that. Again, they gave the documentary crews great access to see how these investigations are performed, so you can really learn a lot. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. So a big piece of this documentary I'm talking about demonstrates from the first what FBI agents do in order to work one of these complex investigations. Now, there are two major types of crimes that are worked at the FBI. I'll put it in these buckets of being ones that are more reactive. So someone's calling 911, the bank robbery alarm went off, and FBI is going to show up and work the case. And so that, during my time in the FBI, that was largely what I did, is react to those type of crimes. Those can be interesting and fun, and sometimes lead into all kinds of directions you would never guess. But the main thing I want to talk about today is these more proactive investigations that are put together over many years, involve potentially, multiple dozens or even hundreds of agents working closely, trying to keep a lid on an investigation and not tip anyone off, and taking things methodically and cautiously to make sure the investigation catches all the bad guys. So you don't want to just, sometimes if you find out about a crime, you don't want to just arrest the first person that you're aware of being involved with. You want to make sure you take down everyone involved. If you think about that, of course, like a local drug dealer, usually the FBI doesn't really care about just the local street dealer. They want to find out who's, importing, these drugs from, out of the country, for example. So anyway, so that's why the FBI, tends to take their time, do these long, complex investigations. So if you're somebody that enjoys solving long, complex problems and are very patient, then the FBI may be a good fit for you. So just keep that in mind. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is how the investigation gets rolling. The FBI investigates crimes, but they cannot charge people in court. So unless you have a prosecutor that is willing to go along with prosecuting a crime, then FBI agents are really powerless ultimately to throw someone behind bars. Even if you are aware of a crime, you can arrest somebody, but unless that is carried through with a prosecutor, and usually at the federal level, of course, that's the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're spread around the United States, and they have what they call AUSAs, or assistant U.S. attorneys, that FBI agents work with to move a case through the system and ultimately get an arrest warrant, work to get search warrants for a case, build a case, get all the evidence, and then ultimately either strike up a plea deal with a criminal or bring them to court and prosecute. AUSAs, they're attorneys, of course, there's a lot going on. There's always much more going on than there is time or resources to fully pursue. So AUSAs are selective, as FBI agents are, on what they need to spend their time on. And AUSAs, they are very proud of their winning records. Some of them are like, yep, got 100%, never lost a case. And that's largely because they filter out all the questionable cases. Maybe there's only an 80% sure chance of winning. Let's take the 90%, 95%, or 100% certainty case. So it can be a tough sell, especially on these longer-term proactive investigations, unlike a bank robbery where, we caught the bank robber, clearly we're going to prosecute that person and put him in jail. That's easy. However, convincing an assistant U.S. attorney to proceed with a long-term investigation makes them wary. There's no guarantees that all of the resources spent will prove a successful conviction. So that's one of the things that FBI agents have to be aware of and navigate those waters. And it gets trickier and trickier the more complex the case gets. So FBI agents, of course, they work all types of fraud, financial, healthcare is a huge bucket. And then there's these kind of miscellaneous cases that I guess you would call it financial, but like this McMillions case. So that is the case of where ultimately there were people that were working at a marketing company that produced the game pieces for the Monopoly, the millions of dollars that you could win, win $1 million instantly, that type of stuff. These employees basically figured out a scam where they were able to obtain winning pieces and basically farm those out to various quote-unquote winners and then basically take a cut of the proceeds. And so this pattern was arising, FBI was tipped off, and there's a really smart, very articulate, clever agent who happened to kind of land this case, if you will, and really push it forward. So that's really the heart of this documentary. So just watch that. I love this documentary again because you watch so many movies and even ones like Silence of the Lambs. They gave the FBI allowed the filmmakers to film at the FBI Academy. All that type of stuff, and it's a good advertisement for the FBI, but it is really not reflecting much of the reality of what any agent will ever get to work on or do. However, this documentary, it shows the years of a complex investigation, all the effort that goes into putting that together, also the creativity that agents can show to try to pin down a criminal and nail them, if you will. And I think that's an underrated, undervalued skill, perhaps, in the FBI. It's an organization of you do things by the book. Here's the book. Here's how you do it. You learn that at the FBI Academy, and then once you're in the field, you start seeing maybe these opportunities to be a little bit more creative with your investigations, because there's no book that can tell you, for example, how to pin down the McMillions, scam artist, if you will. So anyway, very enjoyable documentary. I highly suggest you check it out. So one other aspect of this investigation that I wanted to talk to you about is called Title III, or it's a Title III wiretap. So this is where the FBI can tap into a phone legally and listen into the conversation. This is something that terrifies many Americans, and people are paranoid that, I wonder if the FBI is listening to me right now. I can almost guarantee you that the answer is no. Even if you are a criminal or a bad guy, unfortunately, the answer is most likely no. These are very difficult to obtain, these wiretap or search warrants, the court orders necessary to do this. And that's a good thing. We don't want a society where we're all being spied on all the time. And I don't want to live in that world. And FBI agents, they're human beings. They don't want to live in that world either. but there are cases where it applies. This McMillions is one of those cases. So at Title III, again, it's very difficult to obtain. You basically, as an agent, are getting a search warrant, if you will, or a warrant to be able to do this activity. And you have to demonstrate that you've tried every other means under the sun to investigate somebody, and you've just run out of options. So, searching their trash, physical search warrants, and surveillance, and there's a long list. But you basically have to prove that this is the only way that I'm going to be able to get more information on this case. And by the way, you have to have probable cause. You have to have some type of evidence or a really solid reason for doing it. You can't just be suspicious or heard something from somebody. You've really got to have a valid reason to be able to submit one of these. At least for me, the process was very difficult. It involved working heavily with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They don't like to throw these out willy-nilly and just sign everybody up for this. It offers a lot of exposure, quite frankly, and negative publicity if this was abused. And that's a case where the media, sometimes I feel like they're spinning a certain narrative or telling stories that may not paint an accurate picture. But this is certainly a case where the media, being somewhat of watchdogs, if you will, for the FBI and law enforcement, serves a purpose. And, U.S. attorneys don't want to look bad. Law enforcement doesn't want to look bad. So that's one reason that it helps to cut down on unnecessary wiretaps. So anyway, my point is that these are very uncommon. There's about roughly 4,000 a year in the United States, these wiretaps that are issued, and probably 80% of those are for drug cases. And that may sound like quite a few, but if you spread that out over the entire United States and the number of the population and how many phones are involved, that's really minuscule. It's really nothing. But again, it is important, and the laws that are in place make sure that our rights as citizens are protected. So I think that's a great thing. One other thing about the wiretaps, you might think, oh, it's as simple. You pipe in and then you can listen in and just record everything, and you should be good to go with all the conversations on someone's phone, right? No, there's a concept called minimization. And basically, this is there's a Supreme Court case that helped kind of decide the direction on this. But and you learn about that at the FBI Academy if you go. Believe me, you'll be heavily tested on this and well versed. It's been long enough for me. I've been out long enough that I don't honestly remember all the details. But certainly, as an active agent and as a new agent, you'll know this right off the top of your head. But basically, the law states that you must minimize the intrusion. In other words, by not listening in to conversations that are not relevant to what you're looking for as described in the search warrant. So a physical search warrant, by the way, you have to describe what you're looking for with a search warrant and specify even likely locations that you're going to search. So a search warrant doesn't mean you can just bust down the door of someone's house and tear it to shreds. There may be cases where that's done, and if there's a compelling reason or the item is tiny and can be concealed anywhere, and you can articulate that, yes, I had to search all these places, then you will. However, if there's, say, a large item that you're looking for and it can't possibly, fit under the dresser or whatever, or in a drawer, then you cannot go searching those drawers. That's not an authorized part of the search warrant. And if you do that, then all the evidence can be thrown out. So similar to thinking is applied to wiretaps. So if someone's talking about the weather or someone's kids using the phone, you cannot listen into those conversations. And now you might ask, how do you know what they're talking about if you're not listening? Like, isn't that a kind of a catch-22 situation here? Yeah, that's a good question. And you certainly may miss something important, and tough luck. It's been a long time. I can't state the exact policies of the different offices, or I won't go into too much more detail, but bottom line, you have to listen for a little while and then stop listening. Listen for a little bit, then stop listening. And basically you have to stop as soon as you can tell that a conversation is not applicable to whatever your search warrant stated, If it's not applicable to related to some criminal enterprise, for example, you might be investigating, then you've got to stop listening. You can try again in a few minutes. That's basically how it works. So a wiretap is very resource intensive as well, because it requires human beings to be listening in 24/7 to these telephone calls. And you may sit there for a whole day and the phone doesn't even ring, but you have to have somebody on the ready to listen. You cannot, by law, you can't just record a bunch of conversations, play them back and digitally, just fast forward to the good parts. You can't do that. So anyway, I guess that's good. It does feel like if you're an agent that your hands are tied behind your back some, and it certainly is a last resort option just because of the massive amount of resources that are required, the number of agents. You can quickly chew through a lot of hours and also contribute to some job dissatisfaction if you're one of those agents having to sit there day after day after day and the phone's not even ringing. So anyway, just a little word about Title III. That's the kind of stuff that if you're an FBI agent, you'll have to learn to navigate. And really, most of the effort is put in, not just listening on the phone or arresting the bad guy. It's many hours, months, days, weeks, years. It varies based on the case, but it's really putting all these pieces together methodically, but in a manner that you will be able to arrest somebody and prosecute them. So go check out the documentary, again, McMillions, and have some fun watching that. All right, hope this didn't bore you too much, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk again soon. Have a great day. Stay safe.